These are difficult financial times, and reducing store shrink to recover lost profits has never been more important. In fact, proactively reducing store shrink is likely to be your most direct route to real profit improvement, competitive advantage, and survival. This information-packed video series by Larry Miller is entitled The Total Store Manager. Larry is the recognized loss prevention authority, and in this series, he will reveal to you a wealth of valuable tips and techniques that you can start using now to reduce and even eliminate the shrink losses that are robbing your bottom line. Don't miss any of the 14 segments that will be presented right here. Then plan to bring Larry in for a live, upbeat, and highly productive store manager training workshop at your company. Number 9. This second segment on Perishable's profits will introduce you to the 9 proven best practices for eliminating improper handling, allocating perishable space, controlling overproduction, and minimizing throwaways. Follow these proven techniques and you'll cut your perishable shrink by 14 to 18% in 120 days or less.
Let's talk about perishables and the 9 best practices to improve perishable profit through a total store management approach. If we look at where shrink is in our perishable departments, we look at the sources of shrink. I'd like you to take a look at that chart, and I'd like you to circle on your paper where the most of the shrink is, right? If you notice, it's in improper handling, space allocation, overproduction, and throwaways across the bottom of that chart, right? Those things are where store managers nationwide and perishable managers nationwide report the greatest amount of their shrink comes from. So if that's where the greatest amount of shrink comes from, according to store managers nationwide, from Upper East to Lower to West, all the way across, we can certainly recognize that shoplifting has an effect, cashier errors and theft has an effect, but improper handling says that we have within our grip the ability to milk more profit out of our departments, out of our perishable departments, just by improving the best practices that we employ in the stores. So it starts with a smart order. Everything in my world when it comes to perishables starts with how do I order? When do I order? How do I order? What do I take into consideration? Because it will dictate whether or not my racks are full, whether my racks are rotated, whether my cooler is empty, whether I have the proper level of variety, product fullness, space allocation. Everything follows the order. We order truck to truck to meet customer demand. Let's talk about the rule of 3 as the next basic standard operating procedure across all perishable departments. Order perishables for anticipated 3-day sales if you're having a big period coming, like it's Thursday afternoon and you want to make sure you don't get yourself in any trouble, and nothing wrong with that. However, no product should be in your stores for more than 3 days. It's not whether we have a problem, it's whether we know it and whether we're doing something about it. Now, if I have 1 box of tops in my meat cooler, I'm long 1 box. Am I in big trouble? Am I calling the merchandiser? No. No, I may execute on the first loss program. But if I don't have a store manager filling out all of his forms, knowing what's on inventory, a produce manager, a deli manager, knowing all of his forms, knowing his known loss, knowing where his department is, then I can't manage my inventory. I can't make sure I'm working for inventory turnover, storage turnover of inventory, which will immediately add off the order and into the rule of 3, additional focus on inventory turnover reduces that inventory and reduces shrink another 3% in all departments. So as we start to look in your stores and we see things that are not code-dated and multiple cases of them and produce up on top that's just shrinking and dying, it's going to go in a salad somewhere. It just happens to be shrinking and dying on its way to do it. This is a supportive, cooperative, collaborative event today of how we operate better to reduce loss. That's what we're working on today. It takes us into space allocation, the 4th basic best practice of all perishable departments. How much product am I going to put out on display at any one time? Reduces your shrink by an average of 6%. Interesting, again, I was in 4 stores yesterday. I saw from $220,000 stores average to $550,000 to $600,000 stores average. And I want to tell you that they all had the same amount of green peppers on display for a Monday afternoon. I know they're jumbo. I know they were beautiful. I know they were on sale. I know they were in the brochure and the flyer. I got it all. We had too many out, right? Especially in the $220,000 store, who had just as many out as we did in the $550,000 store, guaranteed. Now, they were beautiful. But Carl, as my produce representative, or Vinny, do green peppers last longer on the rack or in the cooler? In the cooler, right? Do they last longer piled 3 high or 12 high? 3 high. What happens to the ones that are underneath when they're 12 high? Not good. Shrink. Not good. Break. Damage. No rotation of air through them to keep them a little bit alive and breathing. My objective here is to let you see what's going on that I want you to see starting tomorrow in your own stores. Product handling. Most shrink in the perishable departments can be traced to improper handling and a long order. An order that doesn't respect inventory on hand, anticipated sales, my display space allocation, and the rule of 3, right? Store managers, cooler codated, rule of 3, eliminates inventory, eliminates shrink, trains part-time Jimmy, Johnny, or Sally, trains the second man, makes Carl more successful. It's a circular win. It just keeps winning to make more money. Product handling, sanitation, the first loss rule. Who can recite for me, if you will, the first loss rule as rule number 7 of the basic practices?
First loss is best loss.
Good. What's that mean?
That means if you had to reduce it a little bit to get rid of it, at least you made something better than throwing it out on the second loss.
Absolutely. If we're a little long on a product, right, because the rule of 3, right, and our cooler standards and our order standards and our display space allocation all says, yeah, you know, I may be a little long on these peppers. I don't care what it is. And we have to reduce them a little bit just to accelerate the movement until we feel better, right? We take that first loss, right? How much is that?
Could be whatever you want. This guy could be 10%, 20%.
Yeah. Okay.
Better than 50 to 100%.
Got it. First rule in the first loss program. Define it. Decide. Produce managers, meat managers, produce managers, meat managers, perishable managers, and all supervisors and owners, just define it. I don't care. You understand? But if you're long, what department do you, what do you?
Deli.
Deli. All right. If you're long in deli and you have to make a decision on it, I want to know yours is 10%. Or whatever it is, right? I don't care what it is. I want to know what it is. So get a little piece of paper, get a sign made, say, first loss rules. When reducing, for first loss purposes, a long situation to get right, soft fruit, 30%. Apples, 20%. Vegetables, 10%. Go multiples when possible, meaning 2, 4, 3, 4, 4, 4, right? I don't care what it is. What I care is everybody can tell me across the country what the first loss rule is. Your first loss is your best loss. Okay, good. Now tell me what that means. They can't. I want you to. All right? I want you to. Starting tomorrow, starting the next day, any decision of structure and discipline and consistency is better than none. Any, right? So store managers, if you don't have one, make your own. Department managers, if you don't have one, make your own. So that when the department manager is off in the evening and he wants to leave Billy a note and he says, Billy, first loss, green beans, stage 1. Stage 1 means 20%. Billy knows, right? What have we just done for Billy? Much less our first loss program. We taught Billy the first loss program with structure and with discipline. And then if we really taught him, he backs up and goes, why am I long? Rule of 3 was violated. I over-ordered early on Monday for, now that I'm carrying it for Thursday, right? Now, is it absolute? Of course it's not absolute, folks. What I'm trying to say is, everybody in the country will tell me first loss is your best loss. And nobody will ever tell me what that absolutely means in their stores. I want you to take it the next step. Produce or product identification and scan file management. There needs to be a system by which you purge your scan file of unauthorized items monthly. It's really that simple. Print out your scan file, make sure that strawberries aren't on there, raspberries aren't on there, peaches and whatever aren't on there if they're out of season and no longer in the store. Because if they're not purged routinely, I like monthly, monthly's okay, right? If they're not purged routinely, they will get used, just by error. You know, not by fraud or deceit, just by error. Somebody will put in the wrong POU, and all of a sudden you'll be selling raspberries in I don't know, July. Right? And it's probably not when you want to do that. Check out operations, train your cashiers for product identification if you're not in a prepackaged department. We estimate that 17% of all cashiers nationwide cannot distinguish one apple from another, endive, escarole, or romaine from each other, and some of them can't distinguish, get this one, green cabbage from red cabbage. It's all cabbage. Just is. Right? So, I know. How many of you have a really good system for making sure your cashiers understand their produce identification? 17% of all cashiers do not, will not, cannot. Right? And it costs you about 8% of your produce shrink. Perishable shrink, where product identification is important. Okay? So, they are your 9 best practices for perishables. Net them all out, put them all together, receive it fresh, keep it fresh, produce it only to meet customer demand, minimize compression under weight, and sell it as soon after receipt as you can.
For information about customized seminars for your store managers or for specific solutions to your loss prevention problems, contact Larry Miller personally at 602-448-8500 or visit retailcontrol.com for free tips, techniques, and lots more.